Okey-doke. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Since 6 p.m. this evening, this Board of Education has been in closed session for purposes of discussion of lawfully closed meeting minutes for the purposes, sorry, this thing goes blank once in a while, for the purposes of approval of the body of the minutes, appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, and dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the district, and finally litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal. With that, I will entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
Motion to come out of closed session. Second.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And with that, we will talk about our welcome this evening and our mission that is a living, breathing document of all of our staff and our students in this district. And the mission is to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. And with that, I will ask our board secretary for a roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Board members present: Kristen Fitzgerald, Donna Wanke, Terry Fielden, Jackie Romberg, Susan Crotty, and Mike Yench.
And I'll ask you to stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. And not until school starts will we have student representatives to lead us. So we'll start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And next item is good news.
You know, I have some great news that I'd like to share, and it's really a recognition that is, I think, well-deserved. As I spent time really looking back over the past summer and the amount of professional learning that was afforded to the teachers and administration in this district, it couldn't go without some form of recognition. So I thought with the beginning of the school year, and to think back on just the powerful learning that took place as we prepare moving into the school year, and also want to make sure that our community understands and our students understand that our vision for building a passion for lifelong learning doesn't end with just our students. It's also inclusive of the adults that are part of this learning organization. This summer, under the direction of the Learning Services team, teachers and administrators have had numerous opportunities for professional learning and growth and development. As a community, we're fortunate to have a dedicated staff committed to that continuous learning and growth to ensure our students receive the best instruction. Professional learning this summer included learning in literacy, teacher evaluation, math, technology, coaching, and professional learning communities. And my understanding, Dr. Hester, and maybe if you went back and looked, we were looking at equivalent of 23 full days of instruction that were provided to our adult learners this summer. So that's essentially, a full work month. So well done. So the Learning Services team, including Jennifer Hester, Tim Warenga, Jane Willard, Christine Igo, Melissa Hampton, Marion Freebus-Flamen, Jennifer Donatelli, Molly Farmer, Lisa Zagas, and their staff are to be commended for their work this summer for coordinating the leadership to ensure these opportunities are available to our staff. But it didn't just end with Learning Services. The Human Resources team and the Operations team each played significant roles in supporting all of the learning this summer. So if those teams would please stand so that we could acknowledge you with a round of applause and a show of gratitude. Thank you. I know many of us had an opportunity to sit in on some of those and observe the learning that took place, and it was first rate. So well done, team, for putting that together. Doctor, anything that you want to add? Maybe not. Okay. Other good news, because I couldn't stop the theme now. School starts on Wednesday. That's also good news.
That's said from a parent, right? Good news. We'll see if all the kids say that. But no, that's very exciting. And the next agenda item is public comment. And just for the people that are watching online, perhaps, or those people that aren't familiar, in every meeting we always have a section for public comment. Anyone in the community can come and speak before the board. If you're an individual, you have 3 minutes to speak in front of the board. And if you're representing a group, 5 minutes. I don't have any slips. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the board this evening or present something? Okie doke. Well, if you do next time, we're always here. So next item, written communications, and you can look in board docs and review that. And next, we have superintendent staff school report, please.
So I have a couple reports. First, call the board's attention to the tentative planning calendar that is in board docs, also the community's attention to that. Under superintendent staff school report, you'll see a tentative calendar in there of items that we'll be covering in board meetings in upcoming months. Reports, as you can see in the description, are reports of information that we give to the Board of Education in kind of a sense of education or educating or updating the board. Discussion without action would be items that we do not plan any action by the Board of Education at that particular meeting. And discussion with action would be items on which we expect the board to take action or to have or for the administration to make a recommendation for action. So again, it's important for those who look at this to note that this will be a living document. It'll evolve, it'll change as we need to bring new information forward. But hopefully it'll give the community members who are interested in topics that are coming before the board a sense of what's coming and when it may come. So that's an item for your review. If there's any questions from the board.
No, and Dan, I commend you and your staff for doing that. It's just another piece in transparency with the community. If somebody sees something that's out there, they can prepare or get a sitter if they'd like to come, or at least ask questions of the board or of the staff. So thank you so much. It takes some time to get all those pieces together months in advance, but again, it is a planning document. It's not an agenda, and it will change. So thank you, Dan.
Great. You're welcome. And then next we'll move on to the update on strategic focus area number 4. And then there we go. So we can, I am pleased to present to you tonight an update on some of the work that we've been doing to enhance communication in our district. As you know, it is one of our strategic focus areas in the Focus 2020 Blueprint. The commitment is to continue to build communication and community engagement opportunities to inform stakeholders. Effective partnerships require us to have good communication, and through the communication and partnership, we're likely to build an engaged and involved group of stakeholders. As an exemplary school district, we believe that we are only exemplary when we have an outstanding partnership among our staff, our students, our parents, and our whole community. But it's also very important for us to remember that our community involves our stakeholders involve community members who don't have students in our schools, and we need to find and think about ways to engage and communicate with them. So tonight I'd like to provide you an update on a number of things that we've been doing to try to enhance our ability to communicate, and we can move to the next slide. So one way we've done that is to look to improve our communication about us is through an update to our logo and to our brand. This emerged from Board of Education feedback and other shareholder feedback or other stakeholder feedback. Our process for looking at our image and our logo included key stakeholder surveys that were administered and given to a number of our key leaders and key stakeholder groups, Board of Education input, as well as focus group discussion regarding proposals that we had brought forward for consideration. A couple of things that we heard through the survey and then also the conversation was that the globe stand and the apple were very important to the identity of our school district, especially to our community, and that any revision or modification to the logo should include those, but that there was a need to give it an updated or refreshed look. So we've brought forward what you see here, and we've begun some soft field testing and roll out it, and has been very positive. The green represents powerful energies of nature and growth, change and transformation necessary for growth and improvement. And this comes, I think, at a critical time with us where we're at with the strategic blueprint and commitments moving forward. It's where we are now, an opportunity for growth and improvement. Next update, and we have also been receiving very positive feedback on, is a screen capture of our updated website. And what we know from our parent group is that the web is our most important communication tool. They often look to other forms of communication that we use as a driver to the website. So for example, how we use social media communication tools. They say use it to drive us to the website, and that should be your most significant communication tool. We also know for families that are not in our school district now or want to learn about our school district, this is often the first place that they go. And what we knew is that our web presence needed an update, needed a revision to be more robust and able to handle more intense content. So earlier this month, we rolled out kind of a soft rollout without much fanfare to get some feedback and input from our users, and the feedback has been mostly positive. There have been some suggestions for style changes that I know our group has looked at and considered, but we're very pleased to bring this forward now. It allows us to publish to publish more robust content and material, but also the ability to include video and video into the website itself. It also allows us to integrate with social media. Now my screen capture doesn't show it, but if you scroll down on the web page, you would see the Twitter feed or other social media feed, the more current information. So at some point tonight, I am sure Jodelle will be tweeting out something, because she did last time, and that'll be like live information that comes into our website. And then also, if we go to the next app, this website allows us to then introduce a mobile app, which will make information more accessible and easier to get. We're very close to having this launched. I think we're ready, but we're waiting on Google and Apple to give them the go-ahead, and then we will be able to launch that. The great thing about our website, our current website, is it is mobile-friendly, so even if a user doesn't have the app, it does view and show differently on the iPhone, for example. And then finally, set to hit mail routes beginning this week will be a report to our community with the theme of Celebrate 203. You have the cover and 3 inside pages from the report to the community here. Again, an important communication group for us would be communicating with individuals who don't have kids in our schools. And we think the report to community is a couple of years overdue on highlighting and reporting out to our community the great things that we're doing in the district and areas where we're focusing our attention and work. This will also serve as the primary initial communication tool for the strategic focus areas and the commitments that are part of Focus 2020's strategic blueprint, which, as you recall, is a direct result of community input through the Future Focus 203 community engagement process. The center is a takeout poster, which includes each of the 4 strategic focus areas and all of the commitments, and could serve as somewhat of a scorecard in terms of observers to the community looking at what we're working on and monitoring our progress in the work that we're doing. We plan to report to the Board of Education in more depth on the strategic blueprint at our September meeting. So come on forward. And so we've been very busy over the summer here preparing some communication tools, and I think hopefully our community will see, as Board President Romberg said, greater transparency, willing to communicate, and information about our district in the months to come. So I'll take any questions.
Just one question. I agree. This is great to be able to reach out to those, particularly those who aren't, getting the Talk 203 or looking at the website. Do we have links to, do we have information in this as to where they can find more information? If you, say, are a community member who doesn't have kids, and then you look at it.
It does drive them back to the website.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Next agenda item, dual language program report.
Okay, and I'll invite our learning services team that will be doing the presentation forward. Dual language program is one of the commitment areas that you will find within the strategic blueprint. And so this will serve as an initial update on the program and a report from our learning services team on the program. So presenting tonight includes our Director of Assessment and Analytics, Molly Farmer, Director of Language Acquisition, Marion Friebus-Flamen, and our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Jennifer Hester. So I'll turn it over to Jen, who's going to begin.
All right. We promised to have a great presentation after all it took to get up here. All right. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an update on our dual language program. But before we begin this evening, I'd like to introduce you to our new dual language coordinator, and her name is Gabriela Velasquez. Gabriela, can we get you to stand? Gabriela comes to us from Schaumburg School District. She has been a reading recovery teacher, a dual language teacher, and a coach who did a lot of coordination work with dual language program. So we are very excited for the experience and the leadership that she will bring to our district and our program. So welcome to Gabriela. Presenting with me this evening are Dr. Marion Friebus-Flamen, Director of Language Acquisition, and Mrs. Molly Farmer, Director of Research and Analytics. The outcomes for the presentation this evening are to provide the board with a report on dual language students' performance. We'll share the plans for the dual language program for this school year, and we'll link those plans to the dual language design commitment from our Focus 2020 strategic blueprint. Marion's going to start with background information on the dual language program.
Thank you, Jen. The Illinois State Board of Education requires that schools provide transitional bilingual education programs for when there are 20 or more students who speak the same home language in one school. And the state requires that we provide transitional programs of instruction, or TPI programs, when there are less than 20 such students. So the TPI program requires us to offer an English as a second language instruction and support in the academic content areas, and we typically do that through sheltered instruction. Transitional bilingual education, or TBE programs, are required to offer English as a second language instruction and instruction in the native language of the students. Currently, the only language group that qualifies for TBE is Spanish. All of the other language groups in our schools receive TPI support. Our dual language program is one of the ways that we provide TBE support to our Spanish-speaking students. There are many different types of, oops, I went the wrong way, I'm sorry. There are many different types of dual language programs. Ours is a two-way immersion program. And what makes that unique is that each group of students learn two languages and two cultures. So the students are both a language learner and a language expert. And then they learn the language from each other as well as from their teachers throughout the program. Our goals for the dual language students are that they perform at high academic levels and that they become bilingual, bicultural, and biliterate. Our program is an 80-20 program. What this means is that in kindergarten and first grade, 80% of the instruction is delivered in Spanish and 20% is delivered in English. So the percentage of English increases and the percentage of Spanish decreases gradually over time, so that in fourth grade the ratio becomes 50-50. Now in junior high, the language allocation shifts over so that we count the number of courses that are offered in Spanish as opposed to a percentage of the instructional day. Because the literacy instruction is primarily in Spanish in the early grades, we look at progress in both Spanish and English. Ideally, we would have assessments that measure the progress in Spanish based on the Spanish language arts standards that we use, because we do have assessments that measure the progress on the English language arts. Right? So right now, we don't have an assessment that does that, but fortunately, there is an assessment that's being developed by the organization that produced the Spanish language arts standards, and so in the future we will be able to have data that reflects the instruction in the Spanish language arts as well as the English language arts. In general, the research indicates that dual language students perform academically at or above the level of their monolingual peers. Right now, we're not quite at that level yet, but we are working towards that, and I am confident that we'll get there. Molly will be walking you through the data that we collect to monitor dual language students' progress, and then after that I will outline our plans for moving the dual language program forward this year.
The Assessment and Analytics Department provides assistance in program evaluation by analyzing data. For analyzing how the dual language students did in Spanish, we reviewed the 2014 STAMP data. For how the dual language students did in English, we reviewed the 2014 Iowa data. We disaggregated the data by grade level, cohort group, limited English proficiency status, and the language spoken at home. We also made relevant comparisons. For example, you can compare the English proficient students in the dual language classrooms to the English proficient students in the monolingual classrooms. The STAMP is one of the assessments that we use to see how the dual language students are doing in Spanish. They are language proficiency tests that measure a person's ability to use a given language to convey and comprehend meaningful content in realistic situations. They are a snapshot of language ability based on a relatively short number of tasks. While the stamp 4S was originally designed for grades 7 and up, we made a decision to give it to the 6th grade students as they transitioned to junior high. The Iowa is one of the assessments that we chose to look at how the dual language students are achieving on a test in English. It is an achievement test that we have given to all of our intermediate elementary students. The celebrations from the stamp data were from 2013 to 2014, both writing and speaking increased by 11%. When transitioning from the 4SE to the 4S for junior high, there was an increase in writing and speaking when you looked at the data from both the class of 2020 cohort data and also the 2014 5th to 6th grade data, which shows continued improvement in the program. For the class of 2021 and 2022, the subtests of reading, listening, and writing increased. The celebration from the Iowa was that the students who have exited from the ELL program for at least 3 years outperformed the students who were never in the ELL program for both reading and math. The concerns from the stamp data were from 2013 to 2014, reading decreased by 4% and listening decreased by 3%. With the graduating class of 2021 and 2022, the 4th grade speaking subtest decreased. 94% of the Spanish first students are also categorized as ELL. They scored lower than the English first students on reading, writing, and speaking. For the Iowa, the goal is to have the English proficient students in the dual language classrooms match or outperform the English proficient students in the monolingual classrooms. The data shows that they are not. The next steps for the Assessment and Analytics Department will be to analyze the results across a suite of assessments. The 2014 ISAT and Access results are being reviewed. The Access results are not official yet, and both data are embargoed. We plan to do a growth study for the Access, which includes how long it takes for students to attain proficiency in English. For a performance series, last year we piloted the math assessment in Spanish. Scantron has not completed their norming process. PARC will be taken this spring for our students, and it will replace the ISAT and the PSAE.
So now I'll speak a little bit to our plans for this school year. In dual language, we are implementing the new Spanish language arts curriculum that aligns with the new English language arts curriculum. Accordingly, we'll be developing benchmark assessments for literacy in Spanish to align with the English. We're also working with the math curriculum team to revise math benchmark assessments. As the tweaks are made in the English benchmark assessments, we also revise the Spanish. And our dual language coordinator, Gabriella, and I have already been working with teachers to strategically align the academic English time in the primary grades to introduce English literacy earlier, thus reinforcing the concepts taught in English while accelerating growth in English language proficiency. We will continue to monitor the students' growth and progress using both formal and informal assessments, and adjust instruction as needed to ensure that we are preparing our students for college and career readiness.
And with that, I will conclude the presentation by making a connection to our strategic blueprint. So we have a commitment that is for dual language design. That commitment falls under Strategic Focus 1, which is design and implement effective practices that promote learning experiences for all. In that commitment, all of the work and the action steps should be fully implemented by June of 2018. And it is obviously one of the third commitments under Strategic Focus 1 in 2018. Now, I'll speak to the rationale of that commitment. this commitment exists so that we continue to make sure that we have equity for all of our students, especially our students who are required to receive our transitional bilingual education programming. It provides equity in our curriculum and our instruction and our resources. Additionally, it makes sure that we continually ensure that the goals of the program, which Marion spoke to and are also on that commitment, are achieved, and that they're aligned both with best practice but also with the legal requirements that we have to achieve. And lastly, that rationale speaks to making sure that this program remains stable and that it's viable. The action steps actually focus very nicely with the rationale. One of the first things that we're required to do is make sure that our programs are compliant. But then after that, the action steps really reveal a continuous cycle of reviewing our data, making sure that the changes or improvements are in place, and that we continue really to look at the instructional design and model, and then that we monitor our indicators of success. And those indicators of success really make sure that we're meeting those program goals, that we continue to monitor the curriculum and the instruction, and that we make sure that we are looking at students who are able to meet the same learning targets as their grade level peers. And with that, we will entertain any questions that the board has this evening.
Marion, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Hello. Jen, can you walk me through a little bit, since we have 7th graders this year that started in our program, and high school is quickly approaching. That wasn't covered at all. Could you maybe talk a little bit about what that looks like?
That was a lot of the work that happened during the 13-14 school year, and that work focused on, first of all, looking at not only the language allocation in the program, but making sure what subject area and content would be taught through. But what's different in junior high, and I think that's different than most of the programs in the area, is that we are providing what we call a language option. And what that course does is it really is a step that will help our students through the 7th and 8th grade year to prepare for the AP course. And so I don't know if Marion wants to add any more to that. Is there anything else about that?
Well, actually, it is kind of unusual for the dual language program at the junior high level to offer this as an option. It's more common to see something like social studies taught in Spanish, and then the students take the Spanish language and culture, but this district has, really divided the language arts block into a Spanish language arts and an English language arts. So then the students are able to take a language elective, and this language elective then is in 7th grade, the language and culture focus, really looking at the themes that they would be studying for an AP course, and then the literature and culture in 8th grade.
So 9th grade, they'll take the AP Spanish class?
We're looking at 9th or 10th grade. Mm-hmm.
And then what would their language learning look like after 9th or 10th grade? Would that be like a program with one of our universities that we partner with?
I've just met with our world and classical language instructional coordinators to start talking about that. We are looking at a few different options to offer for our students who will be rolling up into those classes.
Huh.
So I think one thing to consider in the design, that course was actually developed with our ICs from the high school, some teachers who teach Spanish at the junior high, and then also some of our teachers teaching bilingual. It was built with looking at the student data of our current 7th graders in mind. We make a transition from building our program just on the Spanish language arts standards and the English language arts to moving into those ACTFL standards, which are the standards that all of our world and classical languages courses are developed from.
So the time they've spent in elementary and junior high would equate to 4 years or 5 years of Spanish
You know,
Liter-
actually, it's not really fair to compare.
Okay.
And the reason for that is when students start to study Spanish or any other language as a foreign language, typically it's junior high or high school, and the curriculum is built around learning a second language as a foreign language. Our dual language students start out not just learning a second language as a foreign language, but they study academic content in that second language. So, you know, really by the time our students are in high school, they are much more proficient in not just the everyday language, but also academic language, so they could enter, you know, conversations in the academic sector or even more of a business sector far more easily than someone who starts as a foreign language program.
It's just been hard to kind of equate the, you know, when you do things in business, you look at the return on investment. We don't have widgets, we have students, you know, we have different stuff. I mean, so it's not really a fair thing, but I'll be interested to see, you know, how these students do when you hopefully track them after they graduate, since they really are our pilot program, these oldest kids. And do you know how many that started are still with the program by chance? We haven't talked about that in a long time.
We can get that for you, though.
Yeah, thank you. It's just interesting. I love the program. Thank you.
That was really my question. I was looking at the junior high, and you answered it, and how it translated into high school and where the courses were going to be equivalent. So thank you for all the information and a thorough report.
Now that we have the data, I want to say it seems to bear out some of the concerns I expressed in the spring, which is that I've always had misgivings about the best way to introduce a new language to a student, a young student especially. And my first impression is always to go with immersion. The problem is, it seems like we're doing a fairly good job with our English first students, especially encouraged that the cohorts themselves are improving their performance, and by most measures going from year to year. And then there's some of the other test scores have been improving too, you know, year to year with different cohorts. But the one thing I still see as a challenge is how we can get someone proficient in English that is Spanish first and is only speaking English 20% of the school day, and then many of them go home to a Spanish household. And it just seems, it just doesn't pass the common sense test that little English is going to get them proficient. And unfortunately, it seems the numbers tend to bear that out. What was especially disappointing to me is not only were they lagging in the English language scores, they were actually behind in the Spanish language, in the stamp scores. You know, and these are kids that we've had in our program for 4, 5, 6 years. They didn't move into the district last year. And, I mean, you guys have admitted it. I mean, it seems like we need a little bit more than tweaking around the edges, at least for our Spanish first learners, and I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I'll start first, and I'm going to turn it over to Marion. So I think some of the things that we're putting into this place are, we agree with you, tweaking around the edges isn't going to do it. So some of the things that we're putting in place, those Spanish language arts standards, and I understand we're talking about Spanish, are new, and they are integrated into our curriculum this year. And I shouldn't just say they're integrated. They are the basis of the Spanish language arts. That foundation in the Spanish is very important for the development of their English as well. We're also being very intentional about making sure that the curriculum in English language arts that's taught in the dual language is paralleled with the English language arts curriculum that are monolingual English-speaking populations. So the percentage obviously is at 20% when they're in kindergarten and then grows. But in the past, our curriculum design was more or less looking for more of a longer-term progression for teaching the English standards. And now, starting this year, it will be much more intentional from K-5. So that's I would say that's one of the, actually, I would say a very big shift that we're making this year. Did you want to?
So one of the things that I alluded to in my portion of the presentation was that we were taking the what was called the academic English time and being much more strategic in introducing English literacy. A lot of more recent and current research does support simultaneous biliteracy instruction as a very effective means of promoting growth in both languages and literacy in both languages. And so, when I spoke to the much more strategic and intentional instruction of English beginning even in kindergarten, that was what I was speaking to. So I think that you will see some differences in our instruction and then probably also soon in the results.
Another part of that was one of the arguments was that by teaching so much of the material in Spanish, that the Spanish students would understand the content better than just throwing them in the deep end in English. Yet once again, the data seems to argue against that. We absolutely should celebrate that the people who have been through our ELL program, and basically what I've always argued for is, exposing them to as much English as possible and mainstreaming them as soon as possible, are actually outperforming English first students that are mainstreamed. And that is obviously not the case in our dual language program for Spanish first students. Even in subjects like reading and writing and listening in Spanish. So, I mean, I heard what you said about English. How is that going to be fixed?
One of the things, when you look at the STAMP assessment, it does measure the 4 skills, the 4 language domains. The STAMP was never designed to measure academic Spanish, however, so the setting of the STAMP assessment is more of the neighborhood or like the home, depending on the age group. So I think one of the things that we're going to notice as we are able to actually assess what we are teaching in terms of aligning with the Spanish language arts is that we'll get data that is more reflective of what we are teaching in our classrooms. To be completely honest, I haven't had the opportunity to go into the dual language classrooms here in Naperville and observe instruction and see, everything in action. So, there are some questions that I also have related to the data that I will be looking at as I go into the classroom. So I don't have I don't think it's fair for me to answer some of those questions before I see what's happening in the classroom. But I will definitely be having. I definitely will keep all of this data in mind as I go into the classrooms to, assess for myself, and then as Gabrielle and I work with our dual language teachers.
I guess in closing, my last point would be, I understand the 2018 goal is, it's there for a reason, but I also hope that, we lots of trial projects have been stopped early when they see they're not meeting the expectations. I hope we don't wait till 2018 to possibly make some significant changes to make sure that all our students are getting served to the best of our capability. Because once again, the bottom takeaway is we have kids that we've had for 7 years, and a significant proportion of them are not performing at a level. And that's something that deserves our attention sooner rather than later.
Agreed.
So I also appreciate the large amount of data that you gave us. That is very helpful. I had the same concerns as Mike, just that our Spanish students they're being outperformed in Spanish, they're being outperformed in math, they're being outperformed in every area by their English-speaking counterparts in the same classes. And I know it is our complete commitment to help address those gaps. So I did some research after talking with you guys and really understanding the data. And the research was reassuring in terms of the dual language model in longitudinally doing better for students in terms of closing the achievement gaps and being the most effective over time. In addition, looking at a vast depth of research, our program seems to have many of the characteristics of successful programs. Nonetheless, we all agree that we are not where we need to go. We have some really important areas where we need to improve. We cannot see these kinds of results moving forward. We've got to do better. So I had a couple of questions about the various areas. First, being assessment. So if anybody wants to read some of these studies, I will send them to you because I did as much research as I could about comprehensive dual language reviews. In our conversation, we talked a little bit earlier today about the fact that these Iowas are in English, and we are assessing students who are Spanish first and English first in English. My question on that would be, some of the effective practices in the types of reviews that I've read for dual language suggest that it's very important to continue to assess in Spanish as well as English. So I noticed when you looked at the program breakdown that they never have math in English. It's always in Spanish. And yet we are looking at a math test for Iowa that's done all in English, and it looks terrible, the results. I'm reviewing right from the extra packet of data that was included on the bottom. But I'm wondering, is that what our data looks like when we are doing the types of assessments that are district assessments in Spanish? Could we perhaps see a better math indicator if it were delivered in Spanish? That doesn't solve the problem of what happens when they finally have to do it in English, of course. But could we see more progress in math if we were doing it in Spanish than we are seeing it but with a purely English type of assessment? So that's one question I have.
And I think one of our charges, our takeaways, is part of that process is to not only get better at making sure our students have access to those benchmark assessments. As Marion had mentioned earlier, that alignment in many of the different content areas, but in mathematics, we started that process last year. Mm-hmm. We put in place actually a protocol for creating the Spanish assessments as part of that. I can't say that it was the smoothest in the world because you have to go through a process of getting the test translated, having an English-speaking person enter it, sending it out again for quality control, and we're working on perfecting that process. And it is our hope to be better at that this year, to be able to do that kind of study of benchmark to benchmark, standard to standard type of comparison with the assessment in Spanish and also in English. Mm-hmm. So that's a commitment of ours to try to make sure we have that kind of comparison. Mm-hmm. Another piece that we're trying to put in place that we had hoped would be further down the road is we actually have performance series that they allow the students to take it in Spanish. It has not been normed yet in that study, and so we're starting to gather data, but it's hard to put it in a context of what that means until Scantron is able to get a body of people to take it and then do their norming study as part of it. But we're continuing to participate in that with the hope that our students will be able to be analyzed. We can analyze the data from performance series as well.
It's all highlighted in some of these reviews that I read that it's very important for us as we are looking at judging the criteria of how the students are really doing to really have as much of an accurate read as we can. And sometimes that gives you a little bit more where it's alarming what we're seeing, but perhaps there might be some areas where we would have a little bit more reassurance. Another question I have would be with regard to the breakdown of time. Number one, is that how it's been always, that we always have had English language arts in Spanish as our 20% in those early years, and then the other part all in Spanish, or has that been a recent change?
As far as I know.
Okay.
As far as I know, it's always been that way for us.
Okay, so that was another thing that was discussed in some of the research that I did, the importance of the academic content. And I think that's what you're talking about in terms of looking at that academic content. It's not just PE that we're having in English, but it's or art, but we're also having academic content. And perhaps, again, looking at these Iowas, maybe we should look at putting math in English one of those years. I mean, obviously that's your decision to make, but it's something that comes to my mind as we're looking at some of these questions. Last question. So you gave us the 2018, and that's the design. However, what do you expect for when we will see improvements for students? So that, obviously, you're going to work on that design, and you've got a little bit of time to do that. But what kind of time frame are we looking at for our students? So that as we are developing the design, we are also seeing that our students are improving, both in Spanish and in English, whether they're English first or Spanish first.
Really, I firmly believe that we're not going to wait until 2018 to start seeing the results. I really expect that in the classroom we'll start seeing results very quickly, and that those results will translate to performance on the academic assessments. So I expect to see growth compared to this year, even next year.
In your presentation, you had mentioned a couple of changes, immediate changes that have been made. Maybe go back and restate those for Board Member Fitzgerald, and how those will have immediate impact as opposed to waiting until 2018.
Sure. So one of the things that we've already been talking with dual language teachers about is really looking at that English time. Now, up until now, it has been slated for English language arts, but it has not necessarily been aligned to the language arts instruction in Spanish. It was content English. What we're looking at doing is really being quite strategic and looking at what are the English literacy skills that the students need to get and to build in kindergarten, all the way up, and continue to align it to the Spanish, so that as students are learning the language, it's really important that we make those language transfers for them. So in your research, you probably saw the metaphor of the iceberg, where what the students are actually able to produce is just the tip of the iceberg, and then there's this vast body of knowledge underneath. And so what we do with dual language is we build that vast knowledge in two languages. And so what we are doing right now already with the teachers is planning with them the content that they will have in the literacy instruction, how they will bridge from what has been taught in Spanish to the English, so that that academic content in literacy is reinforced and extended when they go into the English.
Just some of the things that in reading, it talks a little bit about adjusting expectations. And I think for us, this is a little bit of an adjustment of expectations. I mean, I think I remember hearing when we first started talking about the Spanish language program that by third grade, that the students would be outperforming their peers across the board. Obviously, we have not seen that. However, I think that the literature and the research would suggest that we have patience and hope to really see the improvements that should come certainly by those fourth grade to sixth grade years. However, we can't have too much patience. We've got to have patience with improvement.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
If I could, just for a second, and maybe that's what you were going to speak to, just for clarity in regard to the blueprint. It's identified as a 2018 goal. That doesn't mean work in terms of improving the quality of the program and what we do waits until the 2017-2018 school year. Work is ongoing, and it will be ongoing. We just anticipate that, as you just said, we're going to have to be patient and deliberate with the overall program review and what we're doing to help improve it, that it's going to take some time. That doesn't mean nothing happens in the interim. Things will happen, and as you said, improvements will be made, and we expect to see improvements very soon.
We'll see actions and we'll see results, is what I think you're saying.
Correct.
I had a question. You had commented on the assessment where some assessments, I think the sampling was not academic, but it was neighborhood. Can you just explain that? I'm not interested.
Sure. So the stamp is based on the ACTFL standards, and ACTFL is the American college, well, it's the Consortium of Teachers of Foreign Language. I always forget what the C stands for, coming from more of an ESL background myself. And so the test itself is designed for students who are learning more general language, so more social language. And then if you think about the academic language that we need to be successful in school, it's not always the same language. And so in order to test the ACTFL standards, then any kind of a reading would be in more of a neighborhood setting, playing on the playground as opposed to...
Literally, you meant neighborhood setting. Okay,
Yes,
like we would
yes.
call it back in the day conversational speaking or conversational language skills, as opposed to being a university expert and can translate something or something.
Exactly,
So,
yes.
awesome. I just wanted to, it was interesting terminology. I just want to make sure I understood. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you. Each month, a board member for a business meeting reviews bills and claims. Or let me just go through, first of all, monthly reports. The Treasury report, a few monthly reports are there. Treasury, investments, insurance report, and budget report are in board docs. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I really got ahead of myself there. A president's report is next on our agenda. I do not have a report. Any other Board of Education reports? Kristen.
Just a really quick one. I have always been entertained a little bit by Dan's announcement about how many more days we have until school started, but I just wanted to give a tiny report from one of my adopted schools. I was able to tour BB just last week, and I was reminded that for some students, we actually began a couple weeks ago. We do have students in that Jump Start program, which is going on at BB and all of our Title I schools, that is sort of a beginning 3 weeks where they're getting back into school. So we have students who have been going for those 3 weeks. Our students on those buses who are at risk. And I just was excited to see that. We've talked a little bit. Kane has given us many presentations about the summer slide and how we are going down some of our students during the summer. We don't have that academic content, and yet we are, as a district, really working to try to improve that so that the students who may not have that time to go to the library and read books and do all the different things that some students are doing, they have that 3 weeks and they're able to catch up. So I was really excited to see that and wanted to highlight that.
And by the way, for everyone that needs to know, it's not a new program, but it's a fabulous program, but great program, right? Good. Had the pleasure of having her board assignment monthly, looking at bills and claims of the district, and I will turn it over to Donna.
Okay, so I'm going to pull 8.03 from the consent agenda, and so we'll be approving 8.01 and 8.02. And for those, I move to approve warrant number 390897 through warrant number 391461, totaling $17,147,209.97 for the period of July 22nd, 2014 to August 18, 2014. And that is 8.01, and then we can also approve 8.02.
Great, thank you. Okey doke. We have a motion for agenda item 8.01 and 8.02.
Second.
And
Romberg,
yes.
Crotty,
Yes.
Fitzgerald. Aye. Wanke,
Yes.
Yench,
Aye.
Fielden.
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. Sorry about that. Motion carries, thank you. Now for 8.03, we need a motion, please.
I move approval of the board meeting minutes dated 7/21/14 as presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second for board agenda item 8.03, the open board meeting minutes for July 21st. Ms. Bell?
Fielden,
Yes.
Romberg,
Yes.
Wanke,
Abstain.
Crotty,
Yes.
Yench,
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you.
And I'll make a motion for the board
August
meeting minutes for the August 4th, 14.
And a second, please.
Second?
Great, we have a motion and a second for the board meeting minutes for August 4th, 2014. Ms. Bell, please.
Romberg,
Yes.
Fielden,
Abstain.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Crotty,
Yes.
Yench,
Aye.
Wanke,
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. I think we're set with that. And next, we have a number of policies with action this evening. So I will turn it over. Daniel
And I'm going to turn it over real quick to Mr. Osborne, our deputy superintendent, who has become our policy guru, expert,
Yes.
whatever, facilitator, maybe. Okay, so just as a point of context for those who are watching, item number 10.02 through item 10.07, which are Section 3 policies, were presented for first discussion at the July 21st Board of Education meeting. And then policy, item number 10.08 and 10.09, two policies out of Section 4 were presented at the August 4th for their first reading. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Osborne for overview of the policies, and we'll move through these.
Okay, thank you. I think you hit it particularly since this is the second reading for all of these policies. 10.01 in board docs is a cover memo that outlines for the policies from Section 3, which ones have been revised since the July 21st board meeting based on board feedback at that time. Right. And as you can see there were only minor revisions based on the board's input to emphasize that there were annual evaluations taking place, as mentioned in 3.50 and 3.60.
Correct.
Those evaluations were mentioned, but not on an annual basis. We do them on an annual basis, so the board thought it was important that we emphasize that. There was no other specific board feedback for revisions to any of the policies in Section 3 after the July 21st board meeting, so those stand as presented. And the details are the same as they were presented at the July 21st board meeting.
Great. Thank you, Kane. I'm going to ask my colleagues if they would be willing to group 10.01 through and including 10.07, which are the policy numbers that our Deputy Superintendent Kane has just described, with the additions or adjustment, or the additions or addendums that were made since our last meeting to policy number 3.50 and 3.60, just being a little bit more specific, saying there were annual reviews, which I think is beneficial. Things are done annually. We might as well put that in policy. If everyone would be agreeable to that, I will entertain a motion.
I'm sorry, but could you just restate what exactly which ones you're grouping together?
I'm grouping 10.01, which is just the overview statement
Right.
that he had, through and including 10.07, not the ones about procurement. I'm happy to go through individual ones as well. So it's just 10.01 through 10.07.
I move approval of 10.01 through 10.07 as presented.
Second.
Great. Thank you. So we have a motion right now for agenda item number 10.01 through 10.07, which are the second readings. They were discussed at our July 21st meeting and commented about a tiny bit at our last meeting, or beginning of August meeting. And with that, any other questions or comments? Any other discussion? For 10.01 through 10.07. Ms. Bell, please.
Yench,
Aye.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Wanke,
Yes.
Fielden,
Yes.
Romberg,
Yes.
Crotty,
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, everyone. 10.08.
10.08 and 10.09, Kane is still our policy facilitator, but had a lot of help with these two from our chief school business official, Brad Kaufman. They were both presented at the August 4th Board of Education meeting. Revenue and investments, and our CFO would like to begin looking at our investment strategy and felt it was an appropriate time then to review the policy. And 10.09, policy 455, use of credit and procurement cards with the new school year beginning and new procurement purchasers, I guess, or card users.
Right.
Be an appropriate time again to review that policy. But then also what the business office has done is create a user manual, an updated user manual as well. So Kane or Brad, anything additional at this point?
Just on the revenue and investments policy, 4.30, there was input from the board on one revision to the policy. That policy only had a minor press revision to begin with that was presented at August 4th. We made one revision after that to be clear about how the investment was being made, that it was being made with banks, not in banks.
Right, remember?
To make that distinction.
Right.
Other than that, no changes to 430 have been made since as a basis of board input. And 4.55 was not a change to the policy. We presented the policy as is, which we support as is, but the change was to the procurement manual that Mr. Kaufman produced.
Okay, why don't we take agenda item 10.08 first, policy number 4.30. My colleagues, any questions or comments? So before we,
No, I move to approve 10.08 for policy number 4.30 on revenue and investments.
So we have a motion and a second for the second reading of policy number 4.30, revenue and expense, revenue and investments. Ms. Bell, please.
Crotty? Yes. Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Fielden?
Yes.
Yench?
Aye.
Wanke?
Yes.
Romberg?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item 10.09, second reading of policy 4.55, use of credit and procurement cards. Any comments or questions? Okay, sure.
So I read through the policy and read through the manual. Love the manual. Thank you so much for all your hard work on the manual. I think it really speaks to some of the concerns that we've had. In particular, the manual starts with a big, bold point about how we are, and the thought is that before using a procurement card, you would have a purchase order whenever it is possible. My question is then, I don't see, can you tell me how that ties into the policy? Because I don't see that point reflected in the policy at all. And
So you had given me that question earlier, so I've given that a little bit of thought.
Great.
And I do see a place where it can make a connection. And that's under point number 6, what's listed within the policy. It lists a number of restrictions, and number 6 states all cardholders must sign a statement affirming that they are familiar with this policy, I propose, and the procurement, and the P-card user's manual, or something that ties it back to that, which then integrates the user manual into it, that it's not just the reading of the policy, but they've gone through the more in-depth administrative procedures on how the policy would be administered.
Hold on one second, I want to get to that.
Right.
So if you are, I'm sorry, so what our superintendent's saying, in agenda item 10.09, if you look at 4.55, the procurement card program cardholder manual, is that what you're referring to?
Correct.
Okay, so there is item number 6. No, that's not it. Meal
If you
charges.
go up to, it's on the first page.
Sorry.
Okay.
You're in the manual. You don't
Okay.
want to be in the manual. You want to make sure you're in the policy.
Okay,
Right.
4.55 of the policy,
Right,
okay.
4.55. So on
Right.
that first page, about halfway down, you see a list of several items.
Right.
There's several
all cardholders
restrictions,
must
and then
sign.
number 6 could say something to the matter of all cardholders must sign a statement affirming that they are familiar with this policy and the procurement card manual.
So if I'm
I think that addresses the question, because you wanted to be sure that they were, from our conversation, you wanted to be assured that they were aware of the more not just the policy. She thought that the policy does that, but her concern was making sure that the more in-depth user manual on how to use the card and administer the policy would be addressed in the affidavit that they sign.
Go ahead.
I was looking at that same concern about when you sign it, when you sign the forms, probably should be a checkbox there that you check both, that you've read the policy and you've read both the manual, much like, when the students read this.
Their handbook.
The handbook, they have to actually check off that they've read the handbook, and it says it's the handbook. And,
We can make those revisions. I think that's appropriate.
yeah.
Because the exhibit 4.55E, which is what they're signing,
Well, they're both the same, both the policy and both the
the exhibit's the same,
exhibits.
and it only speaks to the policy.
Right, correct.
Right. So it would have to be a conscious effort to know that you were
Signing both.
signing both.
Correct.
Right. The manual is very good, very comprehensive, and it was easy to understand, which is even better.
So I guess a question then is, do we want, I mean, the major point that was trying to be made, I mean, the manual has lots of wonderful detail, I agree, but as I'm getting to the front of the manual here, I'm sorry, it's scrolling. Generating a purchase order is the primary form of placing an order. And since that seems to be the primary concern, do we want that reflected in the policy as well, is my question, in addition to having them sign the exhibit that says they've read both? Is that such an important piece that we would like that in the policy?
So we've said the policy usually stays standardized and nimble. So I guess that's the question.
It could easily fit right under where it says monitor that credit and/or procurement cards are being used for appropriate purchases. You could restate as a number 1 that little statement, right, that's right in the the purchase order is the primary form. You could put that as your number one, and then you could go on
So
to your prohibitions.
another thought would be, a policy is a policy. Controls have to be in place to make sure that policy happens. I'm concerned just that we're trying to, the controls have to be in place.
I would suggest we could look at where that might look on some of the other policies that deal more broadly with purchasing, because this policy refers to the use of credit and procurement cards. So by nature, that's what it's going to speak to. So I think if we tie in there the reference back to the user manual, certainly we're making that connection there, but then as we move forward with other policy under Section 4, we can look if there'd be an appropriate place to put that.
And I think it's putting it on the signature page is probably the most important part, so.
On the manual.
The very
on the manual.
end part.
Yeah. Well, both the policy and the manual, making them, you gotta acknowledge both in both sections.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't, can I ask another question? So we haven't reviewed policy 4.60 yet, which is, I see it's a cross-reference at the end of this 4.5.
4.60 is purchases and contracts.
Right.
Yeah.
So in there, is there, I haven't got.
I have to, I
Yeah.
did not,
'Cause
we took this one out because of its timeliness
Right,
particularly,
right.
so we didn't go through the full Section 4 review at once. But as Mr. Bridges said, my anticipation is that 4.60 would be the place where we would emphasize, if it's not already there, the use of
Purchase orders is the primary,
orders
yeah.
as the primary mechanism.
So maybe we want to have them read when they're signing off on their exhibit 4.55, 4.60, and the manual.
Are we naming policy numbers in the sign-off?
In the sign-off, it does indicate that they
Read the
have
policy, right?
read the
Oh.
policy related to procurement card use. I think that's sufficient. And then with the user manual in there,
Because I would be concerned that there was another policy that would apply to it, but it's not stated. So if it's an overall policy, then
correct.
it's incumbent on them to know that, as opposed to stating them. Do you know what I'm saying? I like the idea of the double check, though. I do like it.
And really looking at 4.60, I just pulled it up. It's on purchases and contracts. So it seems to be focused a little bit more on larger purchases.
Right, it's gonna be not focused on the procurement aspect.
It's
The way I see it is the procurement card is more on an individual and tracking where the money goes on an individual basis. The contract one would be global. Roger might do something on a contract or a larger purchase for the IT stuff, but I don't know if it fits with the procurement aspect.
So in terms of looking at what's on the agenda here, the policy that we have before you for 455 does represent the press recommendation, so it's current by SB. The only other thing that was in there was there was a specific reference to the credit limits that you could put on there, and we felt that every card user wasn't going to need that type of limit that was suggested by press, so we kept it with the original language of what you see here. I believe that this is going to be, with the pairing it with the user's manual that has been developed, I think it's going to be sufficient policy for us.
Susan?
Since a lot of people need to get their procurement cards before school starts so they can get things going, how will this phase in with our staff?
Well, initially with a number of our users on August 25th at a district leadership team meeting. This will
Okay.
be presented to them, and then the business office. Brad, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, we plan to put together trainings, mandatory trainings for all the staff, and then once school gets underway, we'll be setting those up and having them come in and train and go over the manual with them.
So even if I had a procurement card before, I'll be in for training and we'll need to sign this moving forward?
Well, everybody's
Once.
already, a lot of the people already have cards issued so we
Right.
come back, once we get school underway, we'll be going through, having them review the manuals, re-sign, and kind of update everything, planning on doing it over a couple of different meetings.
So the answer to your question is yes, every procurement card user will sign the new user agreement.
Okay.
So they'll understand kind of a new thinking, or perhaps
Enhanced.
enhanced thinking or enhanced philosophy on it.
Actually, yeah, absolutely. Actually going through the educational part will be the most important part. This manual will be a great reference for them to have for the future, but to bring kind of a shift in where we're moving with the district and re-emphasizing that, purchase orders are the preferred way.
Right.
And we just kind of need to educate and bring them back into that's how we're going.
So in order to approve this, it needs to be as amended with the word under number 6.
I don't think necessarily it does, if I can interrupt, because you're approving the policy. Typically, what you would approve is the policy.
Right.
The administrative procedures would be the administration's.
Right, but under the policy, would it be, are you familiar with this policy?
I'm sorry, you're right.
And sign
this
the.
up. Correct. I apologize.
So,
Right.
Are we ready to go ahead with
The
that?
2 check marks you're saying, or whatever.
With that.
however.
It would read, all cardholders must sign a statement affirming that they are familiar with this policy and with the procurement card program cardholder manual.
Under number 6.
Item number 6, all
Before in-
cardholders must sign
In
a statement affirming.
4.55, operational services, on the first page, policy number 4.55, item number 6. All cardholders must, no problem. Are you there?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Must
All-
sign a statement, okay.
Dan, can you repeat that, please? Number 6. We are
Number
going
6,
to-
all cardholders must sign a statement affirming that they are familiar with this policy and the procurement card program cardholder manual.
And then will there be, because there's an exhibit as part of this, does the exhibit needs to then be altered as well, correct?
Both exhibits on both.
Right,
Correct.
okay.
So, yes, Susan, we need to say as amended, yes. To answer your question. Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay.
I move approval of 10.09, which is policy 4.55, as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have agenda item 10.09, second reading of policy number 4.55, use of credit card and procurement cards as amended on the floor. Does anyone, any other comments or questions? Michael?
Just, is actually a pretty minor administrative question, and it's overcome by events already, but certain of our policies, when we reviewed them, we put a little reviewed on date if we didn't make any changes, so you'd have a sense, of
When it was
history.
reviewed, yeah.
Some of our policies have that, some don't, even though I think we reviewed them. And I wonder if that's just something that we think is a good idea that we should
I think it's a real
at
good
least
idea.
do going forward. Like this one, we're now going to amend, so it's going to have a new date.
Right,
But
so you're saying ones that don't have amendment,
if we reviewed it, and you look at like, there's a whole bunch of them in there that say approved 2001,
Yeah, well, nine.
and then reviewed 2004.
Right.
But the dates didn't change as far as, and I know we've done it maybe inconsistently, but we change the vast majority of the ones we look at, even if it's just a word or two.
Right.
So if we don't change it at
That's a
all,
good
I
idea.
think that
We
might
should,
be a good
yeah,
idea. Yeah.
Policy
Yeah,
guru?
can you, we'll look through them. I think we
I'm not
have.
trying to go back and make work, but
No, I think.
We'll review the ones that we brought to you.
Yeah, every one that
and
we've
see
brought
if any
forward,
of
we'll
those
make
we
sure that
Well, I
missed.
think it's very
Because
fair. If you
that's
brought it to
absolutely
us, it's-
should.
yeah, you can just put the
Stamp it
stamp
on
it
there.
right here. Sure,
Beyond,
reviewed,
beyond that,
absolutely.
that's a lot.
I'm not
Beyond
aware of
those,
any
I
that
think
we've brought forward in the last year and this year that didn't have them. And if there are, we'll review them and make sure that
Okay.
they do.
Oh, good point.
sorry to segue off.
No problem at all. Okay, again, we have on the floor, agenda item number 10.09, second reading of policy 4.55, use of credit and procurement cards. And any additional questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. Okay, Ms. Bell?
Romberg,
Yes.
Yench,
Hi.
Fielden,
Yes.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Wanky.
Yes.
Frye. Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next agenda item, upcoming events. There's something going on Wednesday, I hear tell.
What?
First day of school. I am very excited to have the tradition, second year in a row, with Mark Bailey and our superintendent, to go to all 22 schools. It is a highlight of my year. I love it. It's fun. It's invigorating. You just are awestruck by teachers and all the work that's been going on all summer, that now I feel like we have a real good, we have a sense for what's been done all summer in the 23 days that, is it really summer? I don't know. Anyhow, hopefully everyone all the board members and my colleagues that wish to go to a school have already put in your put in your request, and we will see you out on the road. Anything else to highlight in? I look at Julie, because I'm so thankful that all these things are on here so well in advance. It wasn't always the way. Wasn't always the way. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, and we will see. Happy Labor Day. Tuesday meeting, yes. Good point. Tuesday meeting on September 2nd. Happy first day of school.